Hello and welcome to Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for joining me. You can check out my work at jamesabrown.net. That's jamesabrown.net. Got a great show for you today. This one, not alone. Here with a friend and frequent collaborator, Sabby Reyes Kulkarni. Hey, Sabby.
Hey, James. Great to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Can you tell us where we can find your work and talk about yourself a bit?
Yes, I've been a music journalist since late 2002, and I've recently begun moving into YouTube and Substack, as so many other people have. So you can find me at feedbackdef.substack.com and on my YouTube channel, feedbackdef.
All righty. So let's get into it. So, all right. It's Super Bowl week. We've been texting back and forth a lot on this, and uh, for some of you, and probably not most of you, but some of you, you might have noticed that I changed the name of this episode like 3 or 4 times because as I started to think about it, um, that what we saw with YouTube, not with YouTube, but with the Super Bowl, what we saw with the Super Bowl was an interesting spectacle where I felt that America was thirsting for monoculture and was battling for it. And none of that was more prescient, more clear than the battle for the halftime show. And what we had on two hands, we had Kid Rock and the TPUSA crowd. For you who don't know that, that's the Charlie Kirk group, zombie group, as I would call it at this point, that continues
Turning Point USA.
to Turning Point USA, that focuses on conservatives, young conservatives in particular, but conservatives. And we had the NFL in Bad Bunny opting for the first time ever to do a halftime show that was entirely in Spanish. Obviously, Bad Bunny is a giant star, and it's like I don't mind the choice of Bad Bunny for this kind of circumstance, but man, that's a statement to do it entirely in Spanish. And one that I feel like, well, I do. I think Kid Rock did say it best. I'll
Oh,
go
wow.
straight to
To me,
him
it was
for a
kind of just
moment.
like another middle finger to conservatives, to the MAGA.
Yeah.
And I think it was a middle finger to conservatives in MAGA, but I don't think it was necessarily about them. But I certainly do agree with him that it was a middle finger to them. I think it's clear that this move was about trying to draw. The NFL is intentionally trying to internationalize their games. We're going to be in 16 overseas games very soon.
One of them in Australia. They're starting the season, I believe,
I believe it's
in
going to end up on
Australia,
a Wednesday.
which is like
Yeah,
a brutal, it's like a 24-hour trip. Although they're obviously flying chartered jets, but still the time
sure,
difference and everything.
sure. But that's the I do think that that's part of this is trying to internationalize the football, and and one way to do it was embracing Bad Bunny, embracing this giant act that has American music. The NFL has decided to do the same. I think that's largely why is impossible at this stage. But I think what you have to do is at least nod to your audience. You have to at least
Right.
care about what your audience thinks. And that's one thing that you pointed out in our conversations was it was clear the NFL was doing what Kid Rock said in that clip. It was a giant middle finger to MAGA. And I think a lot of anyone who was like, even myself, I was paying attention, I was watching. There was so much going on. I'm not a Spanish speaker, so I couldn't have the appreciation of it. I'm struggling to understand what he's saying and understand what's going on. Was it a good
You're
show?
not.
I think it was a good show. It was ambitious. It was interesting. I thought it was too much.
Mm,
I think he needed to slow down, maybe cut half the stuff. But it was awesome. It was cool. But the thing is, like, it's hard to connect with something that you don't understand for most people.
hmm
And I think that's where there was a whole lot of struggle on.
Yeah, and I just purely aesthetically, I disagree with you that there was too much going on. However, if you and I had both been in the pre-production meetings
Mhm.
for that show, I would have met you halfway and said, "Yeah, let's cut out," because I would have thought for this kind of setting, it's there. My instinct would have been that it's too much. It just so happened that it worked for me. It felt more like a play to me, like a musical. Like it felt like a Broadway musical in a
But
lot of
that's not
ways.
the place for a play.
I I know,
Like
I know.
it's so it's not it's a passive experience. Like I'm sure some people who listen to that who listened and watched were giant Bad Buddy fans, and they wanted to like go and and embrace it. You know, there's this whole um subculture who's like, hey, we're gonna go and we'll have a giant middle finger to MAGA, and we're gonna embrace this, as I think a lot of the media coverage certainly seemed to. Um,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, there was I should have got a screenshot of this one, but there was a great example of this, which was a Variety review of it, and he didn't like the response he got from his review, so he wrote a column on the response to his review, and one of the articles, it, I think one of the responses really said it all, because I certainly felt this way, was that hey, um, I bet you pre-wrote that article before you saw the
Mm.
the halftime shows. And I certainly felt that way across the board. It was so
Oh God.
predictable. You saw the right wing, the right wing people embrace TPUSA's um, show, which was interesting enough and fine, and you saw the left wing people raise up the Bad Bunny show like it was, like you said, a play, like it was this sort of high end art, when it was just really booty shaking Latinas and a bunch of
And
moments
two
where people,
guys and two
well, and
Latinos. Did you see? Did you
two
notice that?
Latinos, I did, and people just sort of climbing power lines. And I know there are a bunch of different stuff there where they were trying to make messages, and obviously Bad Bunny with the message on the football, and all this stuff, that all these symbols that they were trying to get us to embrace. It was too much.
Well, I don't know if Bad Bunny would even have that kind of set. I should have looked this up because really, I'm holding out. If I ever get a chance to go see him now, after watching that show, I would definitely go to a concert. I don't think in a big arena, or certainly not a soccer stadium or something like that, like one of these big outdoor places that he could play overseas. I don't think he's doing all that stuff there. I think this was for TV, optimized for TV. And if you were in the stadium, I don't think you would have been able to see all the details. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
I saw a bunch of social media clips of people inside the stadium who were like,
And
I
was he
don't know
like
what the hell
this
is going
big?
on.
Yeah, was he like that big, like with all these other people around him? So I think we have to remember, because I'm so with you on this, like the very predictably on the right, people are like fumbling over themselves, bending over backwards to like extol how great the Kid Rock show was and how awful, the Bad Bunny thing was, and how this is disrespectful to America. And then you've got the flip side, right? And all these people, all these well-meaning white progressives who just without even understanding that they're being served Kool-Aid, just drink the Kool-Aid regardless of the flavor. They're like, oh, something tells me that I'm supposed to be culturally erudite here, and I'm supposed to be inviting and inclusive. So this is great. This is great. Here's the thing. Older Latin people of a certain generation don't fucking understand Bad Bunny either, or understand his music. Okay, that's the first and foremost. On the highest authority, there's a guy named Miguel Amadeo. He is the founder of the oldest record store in New York City. I forgot the name of the place. It's in the Bronx, and I meant to try to go interview him the last time I was there. He was a significant figure in the founding of Fani out of New York City, the Bronx. He doesn't sell Bad Bunny music because he doesn't approve of it. So where's the racial angle there? He's Puerto Rican, or I believe he might be Cuban, actually. Now that I think about it, I should know that. but assuming that, oh, you're all Latin, so you're going to appreciate this, you're going to understand this. Not all Latin people understand that reggaeton style at that tempo, that kind of rapid fire. Okay. And just for perspective, both my mom and my brother didn't even hear it when he name dropped the street I grew up on. He name dropped the Grand Concourse in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yo, did you, afterwards, I was like, did you notice? No, I actually didn't know. So they didn't even catch that themselves. And they're way more fluent, my mom and brother, in Spanish than I am. I'm like really rusty. Um, this idea of blanketing the whole Latin world into one thing, and that this is the act that's going to represent inclusiveness, that's not the case. If you're sitting next to like a 65-year-old person who's a fan of football, they might be like, what the fuck is this music? I don't get this shit. This is for young kids. You know what I mean? So again, the racial entrapment angle, I so much is about messaging, about how you communicate. It's the same thing with Kendrick. It's like, we're going to put something out there. This is not for you. This is not, I saw so many people saying that kind of thing. If you don't get it, then it's
Mm-hmm.
not for you. It's like, is that really what we need? Are you really going to be heard when what you're saying is fuck you? I don't want you to hear me. I don't care if you hear me. I don't care if you understand. And the last thing too, where he was talking about America, and then he brought in all
Mm-hmm.
the other countries in the Americas. While I get behind that idea, not the time or the place for putting Americans a sense of who we are, and even using the word Americans, for putting that on the chopping block in that moment. That's not the moment that you try to say, hey, we're all part of the Western Hemisphere here. We're all part of something bigger. That did not land well, I don't think. And again, I was like kind of cringing at that, not because I disagree with the message, but because the delivery, it's almost like it's engineered not to be heard. And it makes me wonder whether the NFL are stoking culture war division on purpose, because they're fucking billionaires. Why do they care about
Mm.
how the progressive left cares about ICE and is concerned about immigrants' rights and all that stuff?
Um,
Why are they kind of throwing a bone at that? I don't think they.
why did they care about why do they care about Colin Kaepernick? Why do they care about George Floyd? And why do why do they have players have end racism and it takes all of us in the end zone and all this? It's not about it's about the well, to use a I think overused term, but whitewashing themselves. um whether they I mean, we know that most owners are not liberals. Um, there's some apolitical ones. There's a lot of conservatives, and I think there's some insecurity there where they feel like, hey, if we cloak ourselves in elements of liberalism, we can be protected from, claims that, that Colin Kaepernick made, like that the draft is essentially akin to,
Right.
slavery and a slave auction, and and so it's kind of like, I look at it kind of like, I think of the fact that NGOs and all these nonprofits all from donations from during the whole, race riot, um, George Floyd Summer of Love, and the rise of Black Lives Matter. I look at it as similar than that, where we see all these companies sort of fall over themselves to sort of say, "Oh, we like black people, we love black people, we're going to shoehorn black people everywhere we can," and I look at it as sort of a same thing with gay culture and lesbian culture, where we see like we're no, we of course we like it. We don't just accept it and yeah, it's a part of, America. No, we're going to shoehorn it into everything we do all the time. This is I think the reflection of it all. It's like it's an overcompensation for the fact that the NFL is owned by a bunch of white billionaires for the most part. I think it's 30 of 32 white billionaires, at and it's
And the Shad Khan, right?
yeah, Shad Khan.
Green Bay collectively,
Yeah,
cooperatively, or whatever, owns
yeah, yeah,
the Packers, and then Shad Khan owns the Jaguars, and
yeah,
that's it.
absolutely. And like so I think it's an overcompensation. I do think there was a little bit of pressure, or at least over the last decade or so, from players. Um, but even there, if you look at the breakdown, the voter
Do we know
registration,
whether
which only
players
tells you
Hugh?
so
Yeah,
much.
do we know whether players
Oh,
Hugh?
there was a
I don't
very
think.
interesting breakdown. There's a
Yeah,
very
well, my
interesting
guess is
breakdown that
they
I
Hugh
found on this.
conservative.
No, actually more independent.
Mm.
They're kind
But
of they're in my world, where and I noticed this from a lot of players who do post politically. It's very heterodox. The NBA skews way left.
sure,
The WNBA skews the most left. Um, uh, baseball and hockey are kind of in the middle.
hmm,
Um, Players in the NFL are more, you know, I, about even Democrat, Republican, with a ton of independents.
interesting. See, that's interesting. That's super super interesting. So you're touching on something we've talked about a lot that I find really fascinating, which is that corporations care about something that is not measurable strictly in financial terms. They often have these abstract desires. You talked about this with networks continuing their news, like their late night talk show divisions, even when those shows were like hemorrhaging money, because it somehow mattered to them to have the prestige to be able to continue to put these shows on, this sort of cultural equity, maybe, right? And this is interesting because I'm not surprised at all that all the album press releases I get in my inbox use all this language and are totally putting LGBT front and center. Like they put it in the subject line. It's so overdone that it's not even stand out anymore. But when your constituents, when your primary consumer is not that, it's interesting to me that a league would still have this confusion about its identity. I mean, football is like, by its definition, it's militaristic, It's men submitting this. I know I sound like I'm quoting Jason Whitlock here, but it's totally true. It's like men, these big, huge, powerful, incredibly strong men who could snap your neck like this, acting like little boys, following a head coach in lockstep. That's that mentality. It's like military flyovers, right? And then it's like, wait, but we care. Yeah, we want to go global. I think people who are emphasizing the fact, yeah, the NFL wants to go global. I think they're kind of missing the point. I think the people who programmed this, like Jay-Z, they were not unaware that it would be incredibly strike a nerve to have an all Spanish show other than Lady Gaga, right? I think like you cannot live in the United States and not be aware of the tension. And they, as usual, as people, they just like kind of blindly just went, fuck it, we're gonna shove our thing in your face whether you like it or not. Go and then they're like, okay, we're gonna go have our own show then. It's like, yeah, go do that kind of a thing. And it's just very sad to me because look, I know Bad Bunny is much younger, but if you can imagine a time when Bad Bunny and or Kid Rock and Bad Bunny would have been on the same bill and come out during each other's sets, you don't have to imagine a time. You and I lived in that fucking time, and it wasn't that long ago that would have been the case. That none of this would have even been inserted so aggressively onto music, that there would have been just people just on the same bill. And I guarantee you, if Bad Bunny had been alive during Woodstock 94 or 99, all those fucking sunburned white boys would have been all over that shit, drinking it up. You know what I'm saying? Like they would have been like, yeah, this is great. I saw somebody on Reddit, a Latin guy, say, I love the show. I felt a little uncomfortable along the same lines as what I said. He goes, I don't know that I would have wanted Rammstein on there either. Now, I
Mhm.
saw Rammstein on the Korn Family Values tour, and the whole crowd was like, at first confused because it's all in German. And then after a while, you get into it. So that works in a certain setting, but not at the Super Bowl. It's like the message you're sending is you are beneath our contempt for us to even send you a message in the first place. And then, by the way, if you don't get the message, you're fucking racist. I, man, I wish we could correct this somehow. And I don't know if the train has left the station. I don't know if it's beyond hope at this point. And to factor in what you're saying, there aren't even without the political division, who are the stars that anybody in the supermarket recognizes at this point, other than Taylor Swift?
Okay, I want to pull like all three threads. All right,
With
I'll let you.
Bad
I'll let you.
Bunny's
I'll let you
Bad Bunny's
choose the event.
tempo.
I'll let you choose the adventure. I could go more on the rationale of why they're doing this and why I think corporations do the things that I mentioned and you mentioned. I could talk more about the stars or yeah, I'll go with those two. Which one way would you want me to go? You're frozen. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kulkarni is frozen. I lost him. Okay. So until that gets settled, I'm going to go into a bit more of Kid Rock's response to all this.
What'd you think of Bad Bunny? I know you didn't see all of it, but you saw some clips.
Like most people, I didn't understand any of it. I mean, I saw there's a lot of dancers and a lot of big to-do stuff. And, he said he wanted to have a dance party. It looked like he had one. Not my cup of tea, but I don't fault that kid for, doing the Super Bowl, getting in front of a global audience. I fault the NFL for putting him in that position, and turning point for having to come out and have an alternative for people to watch. It's just.
Yeah, and I think that I think what he said there about turning point, about this being the NFL making this decision to that it's not on Bad Bunny. It's not bashing Bad Bunny at all. I'll play it one more time now that Savvy's back.
What'd you think of Bad Bunny? I know you didn't see all of it, but you saw some clips.
Like most people, I didn't understand any of it. I mean, I saw there's a lot of dancers and a lot of big to-do stuff, and he said he wanted to have a dance party. It looked like he had one. Not my cup of tea, but I don't fault that kid for, doing the Super Bowl, getting in front of a global audience. I fault the NFL for putting him in that position, and turning point for having to come out and have an alternative for people to watch. It's just poor kid.
I wouldn't necessarily call him poor kid. I mean, I think
I know.
he benefited greatly from this spot. But what I would say is that he is speaking to one of the things I wanted to get toward, which is it, and you mentioned as well, it was the NFL that put him in that position, and this weirdness of giant entities choosing to be culture war pawns.
Mhm.
And if I know some of it was incentivized. I know that. Just thinking macroly about why companies do this. I know there's this thing called ESG, environmental social governance scores, where it was easier for companies to borrow money if their ESG score was high. So it got to the point that banks were literally looking at the behavior of companies, whether they, everything from racial composition to did you donate to stop climate change, all this stuff, and gave favorable loan rates. And so I think there's sort of been this larger macro move in society where for much of the last decade, companies were incentivized of doing this. So I think this also is a remnant of that. Are you back fully? Can I hear you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was giving you I also wanted to talk about the other side, because I only touched on it a bit, about getting back to there's only a few people who could fill the shoes of a halftime show as we conceive of it right now.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the history of the halftime show is actually really, really complicated, and it's not. There's a lot of iterations of this. There was the era that was pre and Living Color. Living Color went live, I believe it was 92 or 93.
92,
And
because Michael Jackson was 93, so they did theirs in 92.
so
And then
Fox
that
was an
changed
upstart
everything.
network. They didn't have football at that point. And they'd only been on the air a couple years.
Mhm.
And Living Color did a quick halftime show. Those who don't know what that is, it makes me feel old to have to say that, but In Living Color was essentially like a black SNL, a proto Chappelle show, a laughing in the Smothers Brothers sort of arc of primetime comedy shows, sketch shows.
Yeah, I saw them
Jim
more
Carrey,
closer to Second City TV in a way.
that too, absolutely.
But yes, SNL is a pretty good comparison. Founded by the Wayans, or the
Wayne's
oldest
brothers,
Wayans brother,
Keenan
and
Ivory.
then right, because he wasn't even. I just happened to find this out when I forgot which one of them was on Shannon Sharp on Oh my
Marlon.
God. Yes. And he said that Keenan Ivory wasn't hip to giving him the gig. Like, was
Hmm.
basically like, you're gonna have to fucking earn it. So, but several of the Wayans brothers were
Damon.
involved in the production and or stars. And then it gave us Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey, obviously Jennifer Lopez,
Hmm.
Tommy. What's the guy's name?
Davidson.
Yes, thank you. So it's an incredible ensemble cast. So they did. I did not know this until the other day because I was not following
Oh,
football.
really? You
I
didn't know about
watched the
it?
Super Bowl. I didn't realize the halftime show was not always the big giant Godzilla thing that I
Sure.
know it as. And I didn't realize they were the ones who jump started it. And the list of the acts, and it was so hokey on the year before, and there were some famous acts, but it was the New Kids on the Block were on it, I think, a couple years before
Hmm.
'93. But it was more like this sort of hokey high school. I don't know. There was just something very like dinky about it. And then in Living Color, the Wayans brothers decided, no, we're going to do our own. That you can tune into Fox to watch us, and then they had the counter at the bottom. And
Hmm.
then the year after that, the NFL says, "Oh shit, the ratings fuck." They
Yeah.
go and get
It,
Michael Jackson, which is an amazing story.
yeah, yeah. They got 25 million viewers, which is a massive number for anyone who's counter programmed the NFL before or since. There's been a bunch of iterations, bunch of attempts to counter program it, and um, and that was easily probably still the most successful. Um, so that's those are two iterations of it, right? There's the pre Michael, pre Living Color, and then there's post Michael, and then we went through this period of mishmashes, kind of like you were talking about
Hmm.
earlier. Big Bad Voodoo Daddy did it with a bunch of contemporary acts at the time. Britney Spears did it with a bunch of people. It was and then we got into this legacy act stretch.
Oh god, with these fossilized classic rock bands, I'm a massive
Well,
classic rock
not
fan. That's not what I want to see. Oh yeah, yeah. You're talking before we even get to like,
yeah,
you know.
not even with I'd include Janet Jackson at that point as a legacy act.
Mm,
I mean that Janet Jackson was nearly 20 years in at that point.
hmm.
and the whole Justin Timberlake, a nip slip, and then you throw in like the fossilized rock bands. Bruce did it, Tom Petty did it, the Stones
Hmm.
did it,
The Who,
all
I'm pretty
all in
sure did it.
winter. Oh,
Yeah,
and who? The
the
Who.
Who,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that's
did
right, that
it,
was a Fox one.
and
um
I thought they were terrible. And I'm a big, big,
and
big fan of theirs.
and U2 did as well. They were closer to the peak of their
That was a good one.
powers.
Yeah, that was the one right after 9/11, right, where they had the two
Yeah,
lights and the names.
all that you can't leave behind era.
Yeah, yeah, that was. They were the last rock band I think that could have done that. I don't even think they could do it now and seem relevant. They could put on a great show, but I don't think it would be.
Well, I thought
Certainly wouldn't have the cultural cachet that they once
I
had.
I disagree. I think there were a bunch of rock bands at that point still that probably could have. I think Foo Fighters could have. I think Pearl Jam could have. At that period of time, absolutely. Like that were big enough that were selling out massive stadiums. Um, um, and I think at that point, rock had not atrophied to the point that it has now. And on the cultural
Mhm.
stage, where I think that they could have certainly handled that and been relevant and done very well.
No, no, what I mean is if you 2 did it now,
Oh
they're
yeah,
one of the
you two doing it
last
now was
bands
the
I.
equivalent of the Who doing it then.
Right. What I'm saying is when I think of bands, so they were perfect to do it back in the
Hmm.
February of '02 when they did it right after 9/11.
Yeah,
When I think of bands of that
January.
stature from the rock world, I would they're one of the first people that come to mind, but I don't think even today, I think they could put a great show on. I don't
Mhm.
think they would have nearly the same reach today as they did in '02.
I
Like
agree
they
with
just
that.
wouldn't.
I agree with that. And then it evolved again. We we went to more like more contemporary, where Katy Perry.
Mhm.
Um, well, I'll throw Madonna in that legacy act thing, but like it got a little bit. It's gotten a little bit shakier in the last 15 years. The Left Shark dancing, um, and in recent years they've tried to get it sort of out of the pop rock world and go more niche, which is where
Mhm.
all this chafing is coming from. Um, and so like it's been a evolving thing, and it might be time for it to evolve again. So while it may not seem like there are acts that could fill those shoes, you could conceivably evolve it to the point where it's like, oh, why do you need a giant headliner? Think about it. The headliner is the Super Bowl itself. You don't
Or why do you
necessarily
need
need. Go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, why do you even need a music act? Can you do something tied into a film that's
No,
got everybody's
no,
attention? Or could you do
no,
something
no.
does it need to be, well, it could be music from a film, but does it need to be from the world of, like, strictly the world of music? Can it have some other brand tie-in? Can it be something else that's mimetic in some other way?
It could. I wouldn't. My gut says, uh, uh, my gut says that you need music because it's a passive experience. Because it's a big show. Um, I wouldn't be willing to experiment with it. Maybe the NFL would. Um, I would consider, and this is where it gets difficult, right? So if you the first round draft pick would be Taylor Swift, the second would be Drake, of the ones who haven't done it, artists of that size, and then you kind of are just left in the woods.
Mm,
So you could be a little bit, you could step down, like go with, all right, who's an arena act? And you don't have to be a stadium massive star. That's kind of what they did with Bruno Mars. Bruno
mhm,
was not of that stature. He was just a great performer. And you could just go like, okay, we're gonna just go with a great performer. Adele was another one that I was thinking about.
mhm.
Um,
I'm surprised Foo Fighters haven't done it,
Ed
or
Sheeran.
we don't, yeah, Ed Sheeran, we don't know if they haven't been approached. I think Dave Grohl would jump all over that.
I don't think
You
they've
know
been
they don't
approached.
you know they don't pay anything,
I know that that's part of it. Or Taylor would have already done it. I
because she
think
doesn't
they
need the
don't.
exposure.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody else
yeah.
benefits from it. I'm sure she would benefit from it, but, um, yeah, I remember LP from Run the Jewels tweeted, "NFL has been trash. They offered us to play the Super Bowl halftime show or something during the playoffs for exactly $0." So, and we were like, "No, fuck you."
I doubt they got offered a halftime show. My guess is probably it was a playoff halftime. I'm guessing.
Some other type function. You know what they
Yeah.
could do, which, you let me know if you think this is crazy. You know how for, like, before the season opener, they have a band playing outside, they have, like, different
Mhm.
music acts throughout the run up. They have somebody playing inside, they have somebody singing the national anthem, all this. Could they program it so that you choose which from a menu? Obviously, there's somebody in the arena playing, but you get to choose what you watch.
Sure.
Maybe they rent out a concert hall and somebody's already playing that town or whatever, or they commission a show where people pay for a package to go see that band, and then it happens to be telecast during the halftime. They play a certain song or whatever.
You, I
Could
think
you do something like that where instead of having to
sure,
go to Turning Point, you just fucking pick?
sure. I think you could. I think it would lose something, which I think is what this fight is all about. That the Super Bowl as an entity, as a holy day for us football fans, it is a day that we all come together, or as more of us come together than at any point.
A
And
lot of people.
whether you're a football fan or not,
I was going to say
people
a lot of
tune
people
in.
come. A lot of people watch it who don't give a fuck about football, and they like the occasion of it. Who don't
Yes,
give a rat's ass about the game.
yes,
They
they watch
like
the
that's
commercials,
a big deal.
the spectacle.
And just the togetherness, like you're saying, it's just such a nice thing to be invited to a Super Bowl party, which I was fucking not this year, but it was a difference, but I still
Yeah,
watched it and enjoyed it.
yeah. Maybe next year I'll have a straight up party. I was just on the couch
Yeah,
with
that'd
Claire,
be nice.
and um, I think like I like the idea of it. It is the spectacle that drives us to watch this thing, that drives those numbers up so high. It's the fact that the commercials are crazy and all AI and all. I wanted to get to the betting markets that were heavy on the ads as well this year, and it was and the fact that you have all these celebrities in these commercials, the fact that everybody's eating and partying and huddled around the TV, that um, it is. And to speak to your other point, before the game, there was what was it? Green Day played a melody,
Oh, a medley. That's right.
medley.
I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah, um, and I think it's the fact that it was all these things together and it's this giant moment. I think that's all part of the equation. If you take away the sensual nature of it, I think it loses something. And I think
It certainly does.
that's why there is this culture war battle on it. I don't want to give too short shift to the TPUSA attempt, but that's why.
Well, I mean, it certainly would, but I wonder if there's a way to have it be less politically divisive. You don't want the Super Bowl halftime show to be on demand. That would not be ideal, right? To
Mhm.
pick from a menu of acts. And this is so interesting and point and sad because it's like everybody wishes we could all get back to a shared culture. Like it's the Super Bowl is the last vestige of monoculture, really the biggest one for sure that we have left. And it's now being cast as this like battle for the soul of America, right? But nobody wants to share what that is. It's like I want my monoculture back, but I want mine back, not yours. And if nobody moves off of that, then where are we going to be? Is there a way forward with this that isn't going to result in the same kind of thing? Because you're talking about turning points. There were these other shows. There was The Simpsons. I don't know where the order was. There was The Simpsons. There was the Beavis and Butthead Butt Bowl. There was the Bud Bowl,
Mhm.
which the Butt Bowl was a response to that. The Puppy Bowl, right?
The
There were all
lingerie
these other.
bowl.
Yeah, but those were invitations to everybody to come. Turning points is like, hey, turn your back on this thing that's turning its back on you and come to where you really belong. I don't know where this goes, and if we lose the Super Bowl as a shared language, what do we have left?
It fits our time, doesn't it?
It most definitely does.
Say that again.
It most definitely
Look,
does.
I don't think there's a way around this. Like
Mm.
you know, just to go wide again, so it's on camera. Um, you know, it's a rare conversation of this type that we have where I don't mention the fourth turning in some way, shape, or
Which
form.
is right.
It's right behind me.
It's right behind him. Yes, on that
For
shelf.
those who are watching on camera, here's the fourth turning. You know, shout out to Neil Hell, future guest on the show. And it is just a sign of this time, of this era. We can't, we really can't, or I don't think we can get to the point where we can we have to go through this battle to figure out what the next thing is. And this is reflective of it. What's clear to me and jumped out at me is that we are culturally we're having a divergence where these two societies are getting so vocally separate because they were always separate. At least I believe they always were. But it's become so vocal and so it's a level of acting out on both sides of the aisle that I'm deeply concerned with where this goes as well. And the Super Bowl was just a symptom of that. That
Definitely. I agree with that. You know, you're saying these societies were always separate, but here's the difference. Entertainment world that was a universe we all lived in. I half
no, it wasn't.
jokingly sent you that. Well, I half jokingly sent you that text after the Super Bowl. In the 90s, people were just going to the mall and watching MTV, and they weren't as, and there was plenty of violence, there was plenty of volatility, there was, I'm not romanticizing that, but there wasn't this sense of always being ready to antagonize the other half of the population as if you were like in these like two different guerrilla camps. People weren't walking around in terms of pop culture with that mentality. And I'm concerned too with, you may disagree with my premise there, but I'm very concerned about where this is going.
I share your concern about where it's going, but I think you're totally wrong.
Do tell.
If you look at the history, the history says that we've always been a very fractured culture. What's different is that we all have bullhorns.
Mm.
And we have ways to run in herds and that we didn't in previous eras. So just to think about this, I mean, probably one of the high end versions of this was the Tipper Gore thing, and the Parents Parents Research Council,
Parents Music Resource Center, the PMRC,
and the fact that they looked at what was coming out of the culture and that were these giant popular acts and said, this is vulgar, this is wrong, this does not fit us, this is beneath us as a nation, and our monoculture shouldn't include that. That's one example of this, and that's one organized example of this. But you always had these groups who looked at what was popular and what was depicted on television and depicted in the movies. That's why we got rated R and PG-13. That's why we got ratings on TV shows, TV 14, TV PG, TVG. There have always been this groups that people who critique these main threads of media, and there's always been these sort of offshoot media that has attempted to serve those groups, whether it's the Family Channel and Pat Robertson, or it's Ebony and Jet magazine, or and so on and so forth.
Tyler Perry.
Or you could argue Fox News. You
Right.
could argue that that's what MSNBC has become. I'm sorry, my bad. MS Now, not MSNBC. MS Now. And we've gotten to this point in our culture where we now expect everything that we consume to be that. We
Right, so
have
that's
an
where
ability to filter content on a level that we've never had in history.
so that's where
We
I would push
are,
back.
we have an algorithm that's shaped to predict what we want. Is it 100% right? No. But it is very predictive. It's reacting to us, giving us what we want and how we think. And I think that's led to a demand from us culturally to give us what we want all the time. That's why I think that's having the effect politically. I think that's happened in our political discourse because our devices the internet gives us what we want all the time. Therefore, why can't we have what we want all the time in terms of our leadership, in terms of our policies in the country? That's why I think that temperature has gone up higher, in part, not entirely, but in part. But I think especially in media, especially in these moments that we share, like the Super Bowl, I think the fact that we are super served things that we want or mostly want or kind of want all the time, whether it's a Netflix movie that we choose, we go through the scroll and pick out, or it's Spotify or YouTube Music, pushing out a song that's kind of like the other song that you were digging. I think we are demanding it of everything in our lives. And I think that's part of our fracture. Not the whole story, but part of it.
Okay, so
Sorry, I went solo
where I
over
would
that.
push back on what that's okay. Where I would push back on what you're saying is that the fault lines have always been there. There have always been niche little micro, or maybe not little, because the evangelical world and Tyler Perry created a media empire and Fox. These are not small little pockets. But you cannot deny that there was a shared lexicon of pop culture that pretty much, whether you felt like it necessarily fully included you or not, we were all living in that universe. There's a reason why mall culture was what it was, because it's all the same. It's all homogenous, right? Where I think you and I would not disagree is to the extent to which those fault lines have now become total, they've fractured completely to the point where we barely even speak the same language anymore, even though we're speaking English. And that's scary. I think if you rewind the clock 30 years, yes, there were those pockets. There were significantly sized. You're talking about all those other like worlds. Like the country music world was not overlapping very much with pop music, and I get it,
Still doesn't.
right? But we're living in different dimensions at this point to such a degree we haven't experienced this before. I think this process, where I would agree with you, is the process started earlier than we now think it did, right? I think this was a slow incremental buildup, and then suddenly it accelerated
Yeah.
with social media. one thing you brought up though was there have always been these reactions to counterculture. You know, a lot of that is generational too.
Hmm.
So PMRC, things like that. A lot of that is older people saying, no, we don't want the world to, we don't want popular entertainment to look this way. But a lot of times they're chasing after the cart because those acts were already popular. The ones that they were going after, the reason why they heard about them is because their fucking kids were bringing their music, those albums home, and they're like, oh my God, what are you listening to? This stuff is obscene, it's pornography, it's horrible, it's degrading. So just wanted to add that.
I want to share something with you that I've been working on, because all this, I didn't expect us to go here, but like, as it's just the way it rolls when we talk sometimes. I just want to screen share a piece that I've been working on. One of the my nerdy media things that I think does apply to this moment, and I'll walk you through my
Mm,
philosophy here. I believe that we live in there have been three modern media eras. Are you with me still?
yeah, I sure am. Can you hear me?
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, I can hear you. So there's the mass media era where there were a few channels, broad demographics, mass appeal content, and the audience was passive. The audience didn't have much say in what we got.
Really, any other than what channel they chose to watch.
And even then it wasn't, it was the gut of some executive that was reacting. And there was, I believe that there are these moments of overlap, meaning, the mass media era and the fragmentation era
I see
kind of,
that. Yeah, they overlap by, yeah.
they overlap by about a decade. You can argue when it stopped. Some big moments in the 90s. I mentioned Fox News earlier. Fox News and MSNBC were introduced, I believe, in the same year, within a month of each other.
Oh,
Or
wow.
it might be 2 months. We're talking 1995.
I did not know
Um,
that.
and um, and we also saw cable channels just explode. And then you go later in the decade, all of a sudden comes online music, and then online communities, and then you go into the 2000s, and we see social media, and we see all this stuff sort of just coming through and giving us way more options. And to um is that a little bit bigger there?
Yeah.
Okay. We have way more options when it comes to where what kind of media, how our media world works. And we also see entities adjust their approach to media based on the fact that there are all these options. Uh, hence, you know, um, cable channels going deep on ideas. We have the rise of blogs. How we saw the nichification of everything. And then I believe the pandemic um, was probably the through line there, the fault line there. I'd either argue Trump's election or pandemic. I could make it the argument either way for the unlimited choice era.
Hmm.
It's not that didn't exist, but
Right.
it
I
all
see what you're saying.
intensified.
Right. The seeds were there and it started to sprout, but then the catalyzed event that definitively ushered us across that line into the next era is what you're saying.
Yes. And um I don't think I don't think all this were reactions to what was going on culturally so much, I think this was reactions to the technology. And I want to, I didn't think I would do this. Another one of my theories.
Oh, this is like at
Yeah.
the Media Studies University professor James A. Brown, like seminar.
Yeah.
And when you're done, I have a question. When you're done, I have a question for you from one of your own
Yeah.
previous statements.
All right. At the same time, we have seen this rise of power among the people who make media themselves. And let me maximize that. Get that a little bit bigger. Okay, here we go. At the same time, we've seen, we go from this sort of this the creation of media and the people who control it and make it work and the kind of outputs have shifted. As you see on the left side of the screen, you start with your traditional media world, and then we go into this digital disruption world, and then creators sort of take over, and it's more about individual brands, and then I believe these brands have sort of broken down into these bespoke individual content. I like to think we're doing now, where it's like, are we going to reach the masses of your Joe Rogans of the world? Probably not, but that intense subgroups are driving those folks on Substack and Patreon and podcasters, etc. And I think with AI disruption and even more choice in the unlimited choice world, we are in this sort of unknown unknowns, Rumsfeld zone. So that's where my head went with all this conversation. It's not that these pockets. I think we've seen media change, and media is finally getting to the point. And from my theory is, and maybe I'm wrong, is that media is finally getting to the place where society was. I believe that society was a series of these pockets where with a bunch of, a poo-poo platter of different beliefs and wants and desires about of themselves and how they should be depicted. And we finally have the opportunity to do that. And that's intoxicating. And I think walking you through all that shortly is why I believe that we've only just begun the division and the divisive nature of events like this. I think it's going to intensify because I think different parties are going to want more. If next year, let's say the Super Bowl goes with Morgan Wallen or some massive country star, there's going to be, I think there's going to be some group that's going to go hip hop,
or just, right, or if the NFL
or something more progressive,
Right, totally. So here's a question for you from the James Brown School of Media Interpretation. The yellow journalism era,
yes,
prior to the mass media era, was in essence what we have now. You've been saying something like that, but it just clicked for me.
Yes.
That in the same town, in the same city, you had all these little broadsheet, micro brood media platforms, these broadsheets. If you were in one union or one political party or one neighborhood or whatever. So you're arguing there never was this unification, this monoculture in truth. There was just there was just a mono delivery system.
Yes,
And
precisely.
because I mean, even before mass media, you couldn't even watch a football game from another city or something, right? So everybody's experiencing their own little world.
Before radio, yeah.
So that actually makes me feel better about where we're going, that it's not as new as we think it is. It's being exacerbated and amplified in this horrible way by these algorithms and these tech platforms, but it's kind of where we've always been. And so now we're returning to where we've always been. So the period you and I lived through was the exception, not the rule.
Hmm. Yes. But here's where it concerns me for those same reasons. Our structures, societally, were not built for that world. Our
What do
structures,
you mean?
societally, were built after World War II.
Where that was really, you know,
Well,
mass
what we saw between the
communication,
Great
right?
Depression and World War II was a smashing and rebuilding of the old system.
That was
Hence,
a fourth turning, wasn't it?
fourth turning
Yeah,
Neil Howe
yeah.
stuff, right? And you can go in, Ray Dalio. Even his argument comes to a similar argument. A guy like Peter Zion comes to a similar argument. They're all converging on this sort of like, hey, we had this world order emerge with this smashing of society in the tumult of the Great Depression, famine, death, mass death, and World War II, where we literally blew up, major cities, and then demanded control of culture, really across the
Mm,
world,
hmm.
and we rebuilt systems based on the mono platform, monoculture, and I think what we're seeing in society now, in our media now, and everything is sort of that system, the things that jerry rigged and melded that system on top of society. It's rusted out, and we are. That's why things are unraveling.
What systems? What systems specifically are you speaking of, and what happens when that structural support doesn't hold anymore?
That's the Rumsfeld zone. It's the unknown
Hmm.
unknowns. We don't know. Like I think this world to someone in, let's say, 1930 was unknown, and that the fact that we were, that like, you know, like I was, Taylor Sheridan is not, overly factual, but the tone and broad strokes of his 1923 miniseries makes sense. This was a story of this man who was in World War One, who was making his way back home to Wyoming. So he was working in Africa and Europe, and he's making his way back home. There was a point in time where you could just disappear in society, where you could just hop on a freighter ship and like go off to Africa or just go to a new town, and you could just go like you could just start over your life over. You can't do that now. Those people, the people in the 1920s, could not even imagine even the 1950s, 60s, let alone now, in terms of you are not, you can't be free of uh, you can't just drop everything and go.
Hmm.
You are latched into this digital world. Um, uh, you know, soon you're not going to even be able to like use dollars. It's going to be all digitized. Like you and like I got my passport because I can no longer use my ID to get on a plane.
Mhm.
That's you had to go through. You got to set an appointment months before to have to get the right to pay to get a new ID to get to board planes. Like this is like all this stuff is just it's a very strange thing to people 100 years ago, and we're seeing this sort of like transit from um um from one era of control to a different kind of control. And I know that sounds
Mhm.
really paranoid,
No, it
but
doesn't sound paranoid at all. It actually doesn't sound paranoid at all. And the
at least
Ring
I feel
commercial,
it does.
it doesn't sound paranoid at all. The Ring commercial that played during the Super Bowl, when I texted you right after that commercial,
Yeah.
the one where they're like, we can kind of link all the Ring cameras in a neighborhood in case there's a lost dog. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty fucking dystopian, huh?
Yeah.
So there was a response to that. Lots of people, I don't have the numbers, but this was written up. Um, there was a significant number of people who deactivated their ring, canceled their Ring subscriptions to the point where it was like it blew up in their face, kind of. I don't know how significant of a hit they took, but it shocked me that they didn't think that was, they just thought people were going to passively accept that. Because it's like very clear that can be used for nefarious purposes, not just to find your lost dog, which most dogs, by the way, are fucking chipped. I don't know if most, but pets tend to be microchipped for them to be found. Um, so
But
yeah,
just
I mean
think
that
about that
ties in.
idea. Just think about that idea though. The fact that we're
I
microchipping dogs. That some people have microchipped their children. Um um that I mean, look at these things we carry around.
Mhm,
This is my phone for those who are listening. I carry around this giant tracking device in my pocket
mhm.
all the time. It is within a foot of me just about every hour of the day. It's a tracking device that is listening to us. You know, and if you don't believe us, look at what Ed Snowden revealed by leaking all those documents that that there are that we have slowly and I think quickly, quicker with every year, um, we've moved into a surveillance state, and um, and and I think that's part of that unknown unknown. You know, things like that, like I won't go into names, but I was recently in a couple conversations where people were arguing that we need more cameras everywhere in society, to catch crime, and um, there already are a bunch. In an old job of mine, I got to see a room full of them and what they can do. I won't go too
Oh
much
wow,
deeper there.
you mean the you could see what the cameras were seeing, or you saw the actual cameras in a
Yes.
room?
What the cameras could see and what they could do. One
That must
camera,
have been eye opening.
yes. Okay, so I'll give you an example. One camera was what? I think they said 2 miles away. They were able to zoom in and see license plates.
Mm,
And these were running 24/7, 365. Um, but uh it's I think the world we're moving into is one where I think we're going to submit to the big things, like this submit the surveillance stuff. We're not giving up much of a fight. The real ID had people like me complaining, and I didn't do it. That's why I got my passport. But
mhm.
some people are telling me that the passport itself is chipped. I haven't
Right.
noticed, but like that's what they say. Um, uh, but I think we'll submit to that while declaring culturally our individuality, this individuality and niche sort of pocket that have all that I to just I know we're going in circles here, but I believe have already always existed and always been. All of society has just been a series of pockets of culture, who don't feel represented by the mass media. Um,
It's funny because even right, even so on the progressive side, you've got people sort of barking that, oh, your white male tears and stuff like that, and
mhm,
how, belittling middle American white men and white people for not feeling represented, but they don't feel represented either. Nobody does.
mhm,
You talked about this
'cause
before.
yeah,
Everybody has that chip on their shoulder.
mhm,
What you're talking about is really important because we've got all this activity and energy around this disagreement or this discrepancy in taste between the Bad Bunny show and the Kid Rock show, and quietly underneath, the fucking Ring camera commercial pretty much told us everything we need to know.
yeah,
And we're going to put our, I think you're right that people want to put their energy into these more aesthetic choices that feel like someone's taking a
the grabbing
stand.
power.
Right. And all of us maybe knowing deep down inside that we did this willingly. Yes, we were hacked. Were hacked. These companies used extraordinary psychological weaponry really against us. But at the end of the day, I mean, you and I probably had a dim understanding even in 2008 or 9 when Facebook was really taking off. This is probably a bad idea for me to be expressing and venting and fucking vomiting up whatever sort of emotional reactivity I feel like online, but I'm doing it anyway. So, yeah, I wasn't aware, none of us was aware of these behavioral um, tricks they were using against us, but we kind of knew, right? Like, you kind of knew this was not a good thing. I know I had an inkling all along, like this is not good, and yet here we are. So we'd all have to opt out completely, and then at that point, we don't even know if we can. We could
Yeah,
all not use phones, but who's who's realistically who's going to do that?
it'll take a catastrophe to do that happen, which is possible. I mean,
Looks
we, we never thought multiple cities would just be totally nuked with hydrogen bombs, um, and then other cities in Germany would just be firebombed to basically down to virtually nothing. Things could happen, and there's a lot of things that I worry about, whether it's EMPs or the age of our grid and the taxing of our grid with AI and such, and things we know about China in particular, and as I think they grow in desperation. A lot of weird news out of China. Always, every time I look over there, holy crap, what weird stuff, people disappearing, and there may have been an attempted coup, all sorts of stuff. But they have this enormous amount of power, and they could whoever's in control could lash out. Versus, and then there's our internal strife and someone taking an action that could take down our grid or all sorts of things could happen, but it'd have to take an act of probably malice, maybe a total accident that sort of shoves us back into that mode. On that level, I think there's some hope socially, maybe. It usually through trauma and hard times that we come together socially, um, and that the the idea of American monoculture rises again. Um, that we have a broad sense of it. Um, Perhaps we can come to it. I'm doubting it. Um, but that's where I stand on that one.
Yeah, I mean, not even Neil Howe knows. Rumsfeld, we're in the Rumsfeld zone, like you said. So
Yeah.
We'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah. And I want to end here with one of the troubling, at least to me, habits that are rising in society. I want to talk about gambling and these prediction markets and how it strikes me. We saw massive numbers go into prediction markets last weekend with the Super Bowl, dwarfing all of Las Vegas.
Mm.
And we're seeing a reaction to it with what's happening with DraftKings right now. DraftKings is a gambling outlet, online gambling, and they are losing a massive amount of their stock price. That's what's happened in the last day, as of a couple hours ago.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, and it's in reaction to this move of Americans toward Kalshi and um and what was the other one? The other one, a Polymarket, and how this has gone from a taboo to this omnipresent part of our discourse. How prediction markets are seeing politics, how they're seeing everything, and I think it's dangerous, man. I feel like, to get my old man hat on, it's probably been on all episode long, but I feel that these prediction markets are normalizing gambling to an extent that I think will really hurt our kids and really hurt anyone with an addictive personality, which is a chunk of the population. So much so that there was a bet placed by one of the Super Bowl streakers that there would be a Super Bowl streaker, and he won, I believe, hundreds of thousands of dollars betting on himself because he knew he was going to streak during the Super Bowl. Like, it's this, I believe, is destructive societal behavior. I'm not saying that all gambling's bad or we should never gamble. I don't
No,
feel
but
that way.
optimizing it to this degree where it's like you're getting pings on your fucking phone that you can bet on this play and while the game is going on, and obviously anything that's optimized to that degree for maximum like invasiveness for them to like reap the maximum profit is of course going to be, it's going to be driven to the point where it's driving us crazy, you know?
And I feel like we're only going to get worse from here. Broadly, where do you stand on these markets? And I mean, you're a little bit older than me. I mean, obviously, you've seen this.
No, I haven't. I don't know anything about them. I was going to ask you to define what predictive markets are, but I gauged from context. So
Yeah. Oh, you
this
want
is
me?
a world that I'm
Yeah, a
unfamiliar
predictive.
with. I was going to ask you to
Oh,
define it for me and for the audience, but then
sure.
I
I'll,
kind
I'll,
of
I'll
got where you were
define it.
going.
So Kalshi, you know what? I'll bring it up. All right, I'll go with let me
And while you're doing that, I'll ask you to clarify. You're saying that this sort of financial instrument of predicting where the market is going is now having more of a material effect on the way industries actually operate. Is that what you're saying? Like the
I no, I see it as part of our bread and circus moment of now. Where there we are. Let's see. Do you see what I see, Savvy?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh
so
my
what we
God.
have here is you can bet on anything. So you can bet
Sure.
on um, anything and everything, even the amount of tweets that Elon Musk makes in a week.
Wow. Can you
Um,
propose something to bet on? How much is that possible? Or is it all being pre-decided or algorithmically
I
generated?
believe most of it's pre-decided. Um, but uh, just even video views for Mr. Beast. Will Jesus Christ return before 2027? And
Well, that's
I, what I see this as is reflective of cultural desperation,
mm,
um, of the fact that I talk about this a lot on my on the Daily Note. Uh, for those of you who don't know, I have essentially a daily micro column. It's a 1 minute show that airs on 25 radio stations, and I post it on Podcast Daily and YouTube and all that. And uh, I I think we're in this moment of economic desperation, of societal desperation, and um, we are all trying to find hacks to make us feel, soma, from I believe it's Brave New World,
mhm.
um, and um, to feel like um like things aren't as weird as they are. That that we could get around the financial strain that's on society. Uh, that and that are also, I think, the reflect this is also reflective of our government going to extremes to capture tax revenue. There's a reason
Mm,
why this kind of thing was illegal before about 5-6 years ago, because it's bad for society. And we had this sort of like, okay, we'll allow it and limit it. We'll allow it on reservations. We'll allow it in Vegas and Atlantic City and a few places. And you have to go make an effort to go get there, or you have to do it illegally. Instead, what we decided was, well, we need the revenue so bad that we need to treat this like we treat the lottery. So and squeeze every dime out of it, because I think we're at this point of societal exhaustion where the systems that we've built, to get back to a previous point, the systems that we have built are fraying and broken. So we need funds to continue things as is. So we'll squeeze it out of the population more. And the population is like, cool, I can win. Maybe I don't know sports, but I can guess and maybe be right that Jesus will come back. It's only 4% chance. I'll get to keep my money. Like I think there's this sort of snake eating its own tail um, quality to governments just opening this Pandora's box, trying to profit off desperation.
mm.
That I
And they
see.
are desperate too.
Yes,
The government's desperate too
everybody's
for tax
desperate.
revenue. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I see with all this. And I know it's a different take than a lot of people have about this, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, boy, I mean, just looking at that and all the different things you can bet on, all the different nodes of temptation and ways to get, like, even if you don't have an addictive personality and you didn't have a gambling issue, that is designed, that layout right there, that interface is designed to fucking kick. It's like a spider web. You're going to get caught if you even start messing around with it, just sticking your toe in the water, start dabbling in that stuff. Say you try it and you win a certain amount of money. I mean, it's just, there are just so many ways you can get hurt by that. It's astounding. I didn't realize it was that bad. I wasn't familiar. I had heard of Polymarket before, and I had sort of dimly been come across explanations, but seeing it, it's like, man, we're in trouble. That's the only thing I can come away with from that. And then I also had the thought, what could I bet on that I can make easy money? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
See what I mean? Like it's almost irresistible.
Yeah. And I think I find it destructive.
So you don't, how much have you dabbled in
I haven't done
any
it
of
at all.
this?
I
Okay.
haven't done it at all. I mean, the most that I have I've done on this is that I've done in terms of gambling is the fact that is maybe a lottery ticket here or there.
Mm-hmm.
I make a point to avoid this kind of thing because I know I got an obsessive personality. So I don't want to like to embrace this kind of thing in my life.
Man, this is just built to literally capitalize on our weakness. It's just built to,
You can,
it's almost like a bloodsucker. It's like, because again, imagine you bet on something sort of innocuous and you win. You're going to go, oh, I want to do that again.
that's the whole idea. That's
Wow.
why they give you quote unquote free bets. And
Wow.
it's just destructive. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's certainly an uplifting note. So if you go to like a Taylor Swift concert or something, I bet you there's things. Will she do this or do that? Maybe, I don't know if it's that down to the day.
Well, on the sports side, you can bet on individual pitches, whether it's a slider or a curveball or a strike or a ball.
Oh,
Um,
God.
You can vote on will so and so have an interception or and that's where we had the Terry Rozier situation where he was betting on himself to not score a certain amount of points. And we just saw this again with in college sports where I thought it was like something like 30 programs who all had somebody betting on themselves or betting against themselves on these gambling markets. By the way, Polymarket does not consider itself gambling.
What does it consider itself? Entertainment?
Prediction markets.
Oh,
A
right.
market.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
It doesn't
Okay.
consider itself gambling, but
Let's-
the success of this and Kalshi have just really because it's seeped into the American lexicon and American experience. It's starting to have a massive effect on the actual gamblers because you have a wider audience who can go in and bet on something without knowing much about there's more things that in there, as I showed you, that you can go in and bet on. Yeah.
It's a brave new world. You were right on when you invoked Brave New World. I mean, we're we're there. I mean, I'm not quite as I am as concerned and even alarmed as you are. I do think that there are things that tend to be emergent in crisis that are also radically positive that are also unprecedented. I mean, there's no guarantee. I mean, there's really no guarantee that the human species has to survive at all, right? There's things can always just bottom out and can end up in a worst case scenario. But I think that there's amidst all of this grimness, there are other things that are we're starting to see sprout up, and we can probably talk about this another time. Um, I think people do have an extraordinary capacity to innovate on the spot in crunch time, and all of the things you're showing, all of these tools, even the social media, all these diabolical applications come from human ingenuity. And I think human ingenuity can work in both directions. Whether it works enough to stem this tide of all of us, like you said, being sort of corralled into this pen, right? Where, like, we're being tracked, we're being filmed, our money is being, controlled, your fucking ID and where you access to where you can move around, while we hit ourselves over the head about Bad Bunny and Kid Rock. Um, I think that's clearly happening, but I wonder whether there isn't something else growing out of this at the same time. And I've always had that sense about us collectively, that some other pro-social trends are starting to arise out of this scorched earth all around us. So we'll see. And in the meantime, you and I will still be here
Well,
talking about.
yeah. Uh, unless you want to share, what do you mean? I mean, is there something, or is that a hope?
It's not just a hope. I
Like, what
I
have you
think
seen?
that let's save that for there. Like, I could get into it. Um, I think innovation. I think the way apps are, like the way the interface between AI and apps and what people can design with that whole toolbox might have some really good applications. And I think as people start to run out of resources and as societal breakdown progresses further, I think people are going to realize very quickly that they need to be interdependent. And I think that within that interdependence lies the potential for human resources to come together and people to actually innovate and use whatever's available collectively in these sort of small pockets. So that's where I think things are going. I don't feel that. Again, I've only lived 53 years, so I don't have the grasp of all of human history. But the fact that we're still here at all says to me that we are very oriented towards destruction, but not necessarily towards hopelessness. So we kind of like to create fires and then find a way to fucking put them out at the very last minute. I think that's a strange aspect of human nature. I think we are unleashing things that are extremely powerful and dangerous, like AI being one of them. We didn't really talk about that too much. But if you harness AI the right way, it can be a miraculously inventive, useful, pro-social tool. It can also advise you to go shoot your grandmother in the head, and it can completely lie to you and give you totally erroneous information, right? So it's like having this like demonic elf in your phone or your computer that's sprinkling pixie dust your way, and you don't know whether it's telling you the truth. But for certain things, if you target it the right way, the potential for us to understand our predicament and work our way through it, I think, is still very, very high. So as our as the trouble we're creating just spikes, as the stakes get higher and higher and scary, there's an aspect of us that's kind of rising to meet that in terms of solutions. And maybe that sounds airy fairy. I just think people have too much of an ability to snap out of stasis and go, wait, oh shit, now I've got a problem to solve. Okay, now my brain is totally online. I also think that all of this control that we're happily giving up, I wonder at what point we're going to fight back from that, if at all, and what happens then. So I'm on the fence. I'm like 50-50. I think we might see some great things arise out of this period, as much as we're going to see total collapse, or not total collapse necessarily, but all sorts of things around us collapsing and reconfiguring and sort of a barreling forward towards dystopia. But maybe there's something else in there too. I don't know. Because honestly, we've had nukes for a long time. Somehow we haven't used them. I mean, we've used them a couple times as a species, but all of that extraordinary capacity to just wipe everything out as much as we possibly can, it's been sitting there for 80 fucking years. And somehow we have decided not to go all the way down that road. So there's something in us that likes to go to the brink and maybe not go over the cliff. So, that's, again, kind of a spiritual, kind of macro behavioral take. But I don't have a good reason for why any of this shit is still running at all. With terrorism, bioweaponry, nuclear capacity, all of the bad actors, all of the technological vulnerability we have, all of our systems, Kunstler has been talking about this for years. Why are the lights still on? Why are you and I even still able to do this? My gut tells me that human will has played a big part in the fact that we still exist at all. And I think our species is very, very pathological, extremely, extremely self-destructive, but there's something else there too. And for whatever reason, it's still here. Does that answer your question? I didn't give you any really good examples. I'll give you one example. I know somebody who wanted to communities, like phone lists of people you could call in a crisis, and you all agree to be on each other's, if you need to borrow $25 or you need a ride or something, or you have an emergency or something. So I started talking with this person and I was like, well, wait a minute. You could design an app that people sign into these little pods, and then you say, oh, I can be a helper, I can help in this way, or I might need this, or I might need this. And there's a logistics to how this would work. But I can't imagine there aren't people looking at what's available, thinking in those terms to solve problems. And whenever I walk around the suburbs, I'm like, when are all these people who are just sitting in their houses on screens going to realize you need to get to start to know your neighbors and start to realize what they can fix, what they're good at? Like, we're going to need this period of total isolation, living in our own tunnel, rabbit hole, I think is going to be over the minute things get hard. So I think some good will come of that. Neil Howe will probably have a better answer for you than I do.
All right, Zabby.
Wait. I want to hear what you. I want to hear if any of that made sense to you at all.
Sure. Look, I tend to agree with you that we are going to, to use a Neil Hallism, it doesn't happen on a sunny day.
Mm.
Change doesn't happen on a sunny day. It's you know, I have a neighbor across the street from me, and we've talked. He's moved in what, maybe 2 years ago, and we've talked some, but not much. Um, the longest conversation we had was when we were both shoveling our driveways,
Mm-hmm.
because it forced us both to be outside the house. And we're both nice enough, along with another neighbor of mine who would talk to more often. We're all outside, and we were all like working and doing, you know, the big old man thing. And, and we were talking about snow blowers and all that stuff, and talking about, you know, culture and neighborliness and all that stuff. And it's because that's a minor crisis, especially in our part of the world. We live in Western New York, but it's a crisis. We got 18 inches of snow, and we had to make our homes accessible. So I get the point, and I agree to a point that in extreme circumstances and in circumstances of concern that we will see people come together. I know of some examples of this, where groups are forming around the whole ICE issue.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a massive amount of groups form, including TPUSA. They didn't form, but they so many umbrellas grew as sort of like the whole, you know, Trump under attack thing. So like there's people meeting in their pods to discuss their things. And I do think that's a thing that's going to come. Could it be enabled by technology? Sure. I do think that's kind of where we're going, where we are going to, our digital worlds are going to shrink. They're already shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
This free love digital world period, that, you know, that I would call, you know, the 2000s, maybe into the 2010s, but mostly 2000s, it's gone. Like our digital worlds are much smaller, and I think that's what you're reflecting. And that's, strangely enough, to go to the Ring example, the Ring Neighbors app, that's an example of digital worlds shrinking. It's a subscription world of people who have already made the choice, people like me who have Ring on their house, who will, you know, go in there, and you can hear, you know, like people within a mile of you talk, you know, ask questions about, you know, like, hey, I saw cops on my street, or have you seen my dog, or any number of things. So I think that's what we're going to see going forward, is these worlds sort of leveraging the technology for smaller niches on top of the small niches we already have. But I could go on for hours more about that and stuff like that. And
No, but
that's,
that definitely gets your idea across.
yeah, yeah. And I'll do that in the months and weeks to come. Well, Savvy, on that note, I'm James A.
And
Brown. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. Having me. Thanks for being
yeah,
here.
thanks
I'm
for
tired.
having me.
It's been a long week and a long 24 hours. I was up till freaking 3 a.m.
Well,
And
it's Friday
then
afternoon, so you know whoever's watching in real time, happy Friday, or and happy
yeah,
Friday to you. I'm about to go. It's sunny. I'm about to go for a walk and unwind. This is a real pleasure, though, as always. So thank you.
yeah. And I am intending to do this a lot more for those watching. I'm going to start doing daily note, long form live, and then have more conversations with Savvy and others. So,
Sounds great.
all right. Goodbye, everybody.